Guys, when it comes to triceps training, you watched the previous video that I did on biceps training, and where a lot of the methodology that I deliver has been brought about, or why it's been brought about, is because, like you, I struggle to develop certain areas of my body. Now, you can listen to a lot of experts or coaches who tell you that the best way to build your triceps is to do dips. The best way to get your triceps to grow is to do close grip bench press. They're right, because they're methodologies that work for them. The problem that we find in coaching is that methodologies for one person don't work for everybody, right? So when it came to me, how many coaches that I've sought advice for over the years, or how many magazines that I've read over the years, knew that I'd had a full ligament separation in my left shoulder, know that I've had a full AC separation in my right shoulder, know that I've had a ligament partial tear in my right wrist. All these sort of things are so important to take into consideration when you're giving anyone advice for any muscle they're trying to train. Within this shoulder, I have severe internal rotation. Within this shoulder, I have severe instability. So does that really make me a perfect candidate for doing bilateral exercises both together? Does it make me a perfect candidate to do close grip bench press? Well, no, and I'll tell you why. Because this shoulder rotates in a lot more than the other one. Therefore, I have a hard time stabilizing my shoulder joint. So you might have done all this type of training trying to grow your triceps in the classical manner of dips and presses, and nothing seems to grow. Well, the reason that might not be growing is because, like me, you may have shoulder dysfunction. You might not have the sort of injuries that I've had, but you certainly may have instability around the shoulder blades. You'll find it very hard to keep your shoulders down. And as such, what your body will then do is preferentially shift to other muscles or joints. So if you find yourself doing a lot of pressing movements and your elbows really hurt, do you not think that there's a problem with your ability to actually extend and contract the triceps? I think so, because you're overusing a joint. If you're overusing a joint, you're understimulating a muscle at some point or other throughout a range of movement. So let's just have a look at a couple of implements. We're going to come here. So if you're going to lie on your back and you're going to do an overhead pressing movement, okay? Now, first things first, can you actually get your arms over your head? Most people can't. Second of all, can you get your arms over your head still with the elbow joint hinging in a perfect manner, okay? For most people, they have to compromise the wrist, they have to compromise the shoulder, and then you'll get some compromise in the way and the pattern that the triceps actually extend at the elbow joints. So when we think about triceps, we're trying to get one, a shortened tricep, and then two, a lengthened tricep, and remembering that attaches to the scapula. So we do have to get some elevation of the arm, but not full extension of the arm. Because if you're going to extend up, the higher you go, you're going to lose the functionality of the scapula, or the actual ability to be able to extend above your head, which then compromises your ability to use the triceps. So we've got to think probably maximal about here for most people, that they can get some kind of overhead extension. And then a lot of people miss out this fully shortened position of the triceps. They miss that because everybody trains the triceps here. Very rarely do people get here, and very rarely are people able to actually press through the triceps overhead. So when you're using an implement such as this, one of the big problems that you have is it's very narrow from my shoulders. Ideally, if I'm going to do any type of pressing, I want it from here, and that's the position that would kind of work a little bit better for me, and maybe if it was in this position here. But remember, I'm slightly internally rotated and unstable through my shoulder joints, much like many of you. So we move that to one side. What if I was to change my grip? What if I was to press down from here? Well, look what's happening, okay? A lot of time when we're pressing down from here, you're getting all this shoulder rotation. What we want to be able to train the triceps effectively is flexion and extension of the elbow joint. We don't want a lot of this compromise from the shoulder joint, we don't want a lot of compromise from the wrist, and we don't want a lot of elevation and depression. So really from here, we're getting a lot more compromise, because a lot of people think that by coming narrow, you're going to train the lateral head, and then the long head's going to be trained by doing kind of underhand movements. Well, all you're actually trying to do is just compromise range of movements where you're less effective at training the triceps. What ends up happening is you overstimulate an area, which places a lot of tension, especially around the elbow joint. You get pain, you get underdeveloped muscles. The movement that we really want, this doesn't matter. What's happening here doesn't really matter. We want flexion and extension of the elbow joint. So what if I was to then change the implement and say, right, Mark is in a fixed position and he's not got great mobility through his shoulders. So why don't we train it in a single fashion, okay? Now this is a fantastic way to be able to lock in and train the tricep independently. Now a lot of people will say that you've got to train the triceps with as much load as possible. You're seeing the size of the muscles, they're not very big. So when we look at biceps and we say to people that to get a full flexion extension of the elbow joint from the full range, that's what's going to stimulate the muscle. Over time, and I'm a big proponent of lifting more weight, over time, you will get stronger and the muscle fibers will grow. But in the initial outset, you've got to train a muscle in its fully shortened range, its mid-range, and then find some way of being able to get it in some form of length and range, okay? But your scapular stability is going to determine your ability to lock down. So in a lot of cases, what I'll do with people is we'll find some way of being able to lock down and then extend the elbow. And if you remember when you do the triceps, this is not a fully extended tricep. That is a fully extended tricep. So we don't want all this. We want extension, 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 and then a squeeze and a full contraction of the triceps. So we're kind of coming to about here. We're going to come up and we're going to work short, 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 short. That's fully there. Now we can lean forward slightly and train that kind of mid range where we're not necessarily working the full contraction at the bottom, okay? And then if we want, then we can actually then change and then work that slightly. We'd have to put this down a little bit. Okay, so then we can start to work that slightly length and range of the triceps. So you can work all three ranges. But when you work individually, okay, when you work individually, you can train the heads of the tricep, all three of the heads of the tricep, just by flexion and extension of the elbow joint. All I've done at the moment is really try to explain to you that the elbow joint, when you train the tricep, just needs to flex and extend. You need to get it from here, you need to train it from here, and you need to train the triceps from here. Now, remember, with the long head of the triceps attaching to the scapula, when you get to here, it's about as far as you need to go. Any higher above your head for triceps training, all that's moving is the scapula. You're not actually changing the length of the head of the triceps. All that you're doing here is you're compromising your ability to be able to do the exercise even further. Now, in order to train your triceps in this fully shortened position, is something that I like doing. If you've got very unstable triceps, if you have unstable shoulder blades, just like in bodybuilding in any fashion, the quickest way to grow a muscle is to lock in and load. The more unstable you are, the more instability you're going to have and the less you're going to be able to stimulate a muscle on its own. So what I like to do is use an incline bench you see here, put it upright, and then the first thing I'm going to do is drive my shoulder blades back into it. So I've got like a brace. So I can push back into it. I feel myself locked in, all right? Now, with the way that the cables are set, due to the forces, this is the position where the triceps is going to be very harder. So I can train that, but I'm pretty strong there. So that's pretty cool, all right? Now, to get my triceps to fully extend to the point where I'm actually probably weakest, and so that I can squeeze behind the midline behind my body, I need the cable and the weight to drop off to get a little bit lighter. So if it was always in here I was training, that would be one part of the story. But the second part is I want to get here, 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 and to here and squeeze back. And the good thing about setting the cables up like this is it allows the weight to get a little bit lighter because of the distance from the cable to where the line of force is. Okay, you see that? So with this, your first conscious thought is to drive your shoulder blades back, squeeze your triceps, and then initiate from that position there. You're not trying to push this. All you're trying to do is extend the elbow joint and then squeeze, 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 squeeze. You will feel every fiber of your triceps working as hard as they possibly can. You see the difference from doing it here when you're very unstable to driving back into the bench. A fantastic addition to your triceps work. You don't need to go heavy. I promise you this, guys. Your strength will develop in line with the stability of your shoulders. The strength will develop according to where you are weak or strong or weak. If there are areas of your triceps that are very, very weak, you're going to grow muscle there simply by training them. But if they're weak, you can't shift a lot of load. So remember, when you train the triceps, one of the most important things is to train where you're weakest first. So what I've just demonstrated to you with the crossover exercise is, what's great is that it's independent cables. You're not having to hold one fixed bar and train. And plus, you know, with a lot of exercises, you will not get back to this fully position. When you're trying to get that fully shortened range, even in like people call like a kickback, remember that at this point here, the weight's actually getting heavier on a kickback. So most people have to use such a light weight to be able to get the dumbbell back and contract it into that position. That's why, to be honest with you, I don't favor the kickback as an exercise, because you think about this, you're going to push the kickback, it getting heavier and heavier and heavier and heavier and heavier, just due to physics, due to forces. The weight's lightest here, then you go up, 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 and at that point there, it's so weak, the rear delts are having to hold yourself up, your stability's trying to hold yourself up. That's why everybody swings the weight up, but you're not in control, so the fibers aren't being stimulated maximally. So this is why you look at something like this and you think, I can lock in, I can contract my triceps, and I'm gonna get full development from them. They're not big, they're going to take load over time, but you need to train where you're weak. So the mid-range is a lot of cases where people really work a hell of a lot of, and most people aren't going to be too bad in this range. Lean forward on the tricep, the rope press down, the here. Take a wider rope, make sure that you're actually getting the elbows straightened down. For most people, you're going to normally be pretty strong in that range. But again, take yourself over here. What normally happens when you do overhead pressing, right? You miss out the triceps in the lengthen range, you shrug up, and then your elbows take all the joint strain. You will have felt that. Every time you do any form of skull crushers, you've got, look at this, I can't even get my elbows in to get a nice elbow flexion and extension. So you see this in the gym and people pressing, they're probably pressing a little bit here, but they've got no control over the triceps here, so it gets a lot of stress on the elbow joints. So what might I look at? Well, how about taking the cable, again, locking myself into the brace of the machine, putting this at an angle whereby the force is going to be more here. Okay, so we've got that, I don't want to be right the way down here, okay? So I've got a nice position of stretch on my triceps. I'm driving back into the bench, and then I've got load coming from this position here. Remember, I'm going to be weaker down here. If I place the cable a lot lower, it would be at its heaviest out here, and I would struggle to get out. So what I want is it to be drop off a little bit where I'm going to be weak, comes on to where I'm strong, and then it drop off a little bit to where I'm actually finishing the exercise. So we're going to put this here, drive into the bench. I've got a load here, I'm going to contract my triceps, I'm going to extend out of there, and what I've got is this flexion and extension of the elbow joint. It actually works fantastically well, and you'll train your triceps in that length and range. The higher you go, the more you're going to compromise it, and the more you're going to shrug up and use completely the wrong muscles and end up with joint pain. You've got the two extremities where you're going to be pretty weak. Short and longer range, okay? Try and train unilaterally to start with. That's one arm at a time. Remember, I've got some rotation issues here, there's some rotation issues here. Then you're going to move on to the mid-range, okay? When we talk about the mid-range, or the mid-range fibers, one of the things that people always struggle with is stability. We've talked about it all the way through. Stability fails, and what happens? Rotation of the shoulder joints, and you never ever stimulate the triceps fully. Still, you can get stronger and stronger and stronger, but learn how to make sure you initiate through all the extremities and train through the extremities with the triceps. You're going to get stronger, promise you get bigger. So with this, I like to use an ankle strap, set it at biceps height, Put enough load on so it feels like it's pulling you back, but not enough that you've got to literally chug it with you. So I've got a little bit of a load, about 25 kilos, and I've set the cable height, okay, to here, all right? So with that, what we're gonna do is we've got most of the load here, okay? That's where I want that mid-range, here. So we've got most of the load there. Not all the way up, and what I'm gonna do is apply pressure into here. Now the thing about applying pressure into here is that as I'm pushing in, I push into my biceps. That's making me contract my triceps fully at the bottom. If I didn't, what could happen as I start to get weak in that position is, like most people, you start to lift your shoulder up or rotate the shoulder joint. So with this, I'm able to contract, straighten my elbow joint, driving into the pad, straighten my elbow joint, driving in, straighten. Bracing into here and using this, pushing into my biceps, has revolutionized my triceps training, and I know I'm going to see such a huge difference to my biceps and triceps this year coming into my show, and then next year, as I develop, they're just going to get bigger. But then when I put them into certain other exercises, do I have a lot more control over my triceps than I ever used to? Yes, more than likely, and I'll probably try that. Is it to say that certain exercises won't be beneficial for me later on in my training career? I'm yet to see, but one thing I know for sure is that nearly every guy or female that comes to see us when they train biceps and triceps, they have a lot of instability, they use a lot of their shoulder joints, they don't train at the extremities. So we talked about biceps, extremities. Triceps, you cannot get that extremity and you cannot get that extremity because of shoulder dysfunction and instability, hence why the triceps don't develop. So quite a long video. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, guys, subscribe to the channel, leave me any comments, and I hope you found it helpful.